Okay. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody could hear me okay. Trying a little. We did this last week. We did this last week, so didn't hear any bad feedback about this spot outside. If you like it, make sure to leave a thing in the comments. If you don't, make sure to leave a note in the comments. Okay, so this week's, we're actually, instead of doing the Parsha, we're actually going to be doing a special discourse. Today is the 29th yahrzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and it is a very special day as Hasidim of the Rebbe, and as a representative of the Chabad Lubavitch movement. Obviously, it's a very, very special day for us that we continue to follow in the Rebbe's footsteps in his teaching. So this discourse is actually the last discourse that the Rebbe himself distributed to the Hasidim, to his followers in 1992, and it's kind of the Rebbe taught us that the last teaching of a Rebbe is, in a way, his kind of spiritual will. So that's why we're going to study this tonight, and it's a very special and powerful message. So hopefully we do it justice. Okay, so this discourse was talked about on the Parsha Tetzava, which is connected to the Purim Katan, which is whenever there's a leap year, you have Purim, which isn't going to be always in the second Adar, and Adar 1 is also going to have a 14th day of Adar, and it's not Purim, but it's called like the small Purim, mini Purim. So that's what this discourse was said, and it was also based on a discourse of the previous Rebbe on the same ideas. Okay, so in the Torah portion of Tetzava, it says that you shall command the children of Israel. You should take pure olive oil crushed for the lamp to kindle the lamps continually. Okay, so Torah tells us, seems like the Torah tells us to make oil for the menorah that was lit in the temple. Now, there's a few issues with this verse. Number one is that it says that you shall command the Jewish people. In other words, God is telling Moses to command the Jewish people. Usually it's the other way around. God commands the Jewish people. What do you mean you shall command? That's number one. Number two is that it says that also the idea of a command it says that the oil, right, that the oil should be crushed, right? So it should be. So it says the verse says. I'll read it again inside. You shall take oil, pure oil, that is crushed to illuminate. Okay, to kindle the lamps. Right. So the question is, why would it say crushed to illuminate? Okay. I'm sorry, it doesn't say crushed to illuminate. It says crushed for the lamp. Okay, crushed for the lamp, not to illuminate. So why didn't the verse say, it says kastis lama or, which means crushed for the lamp, right? Why does it say crushed for the lamp? Why not crushed to illuminate? Because that's what the oil does, right? You light the oil, and it says, and the oil burns and illuminates, right? The lamp doesn't illuminate. The oil is what gives the illumination. Okay, so what is this idea about you shall command? The word sav, which means command in Hebrew, also comes from the word, a similar word that means connection. Sav comes from similar, command is similar to the word connection in Hebrew. So in other words, that God is telling Moses, you shall connect the Jewish people. You shall connect the Jewish people. What does it mean that you shall connect the Jewish people? So we know, our sages tell us that Moses is the faithful shepherd, right? Moses was only chosen to be the leader of the Jewish people after by the burning bush, right? How did he get to the burning bush? Our sages tell us that he chased a small sheep that had run away from his flock, and he chased him, and that's how he ended up by the burning bush. So in other words, he was a faithful shepherd. He cared about every single last sheep. That's when God said, okay, you're ready to be the leader of the Jewish people, right? And not only called the faithful shepherd, he's also called the shepherd of faith, right? There's kind of the two ways of viewing it. He's the faithful shepherd, but he's also the shepherd of faith. What does it mean that he's shepherd of faith? right? We know that Jewish people on their own, we were given as a inheritance from Abraham. We're given an inheritance that we have in faith in God in part of our DNA. However, the problem is that faith alone can be something that you could be detached from it. What does it mean that you could be detached from it? So in the Talmud, it brings this idea that a thief, before he enters a home, which in the case of the Talmud talks about a thief who digs like a trench underneath the house so he can enter the house in a sneaky way. He digs a tunnel, and right before he sneaks into the tunnel, he prays to God. Right? So the question is, why would a thief pray to God? And if he's praying to God, why would he be a thief? Right? It's a catch-22. So our sages tell us as follows. The problem is that the thief, he has faith but not trust in God. What does it mean he has faith but not trust in God? That he believes that God runs the world, but he doesn't believe that God is going to take care of him personally, right? So he's saying that yeah, I believe that God runs the world and everything, and the end comes from God, but I don't have faith, I don't have trust that he's going to take care of me. So I think that the only way for me to be successful is for me to steal. That's what the thief thinks. He thinks that's the only way he could be successful. He doesn't think that he could be successful in an honest way, in a way that God wants him to be. In the same way, in a similar way, we all in our own lives, we have a certain idea of this, that what? We put too much faith in our method of making a livelihood, right? That we get so caught up that we start to tell God how we have to make money, right? We say, God, I need this job. God, I need this job. I need this sale. I need this thing to work out, right? We start to tell God what to do, essentially, right? That we, instead of saying, God, take care of me, I have trust that you're going to take care of me, that we start to put faith in the medium, right? That's what, like this thief, right? That we start to say, well, how do I make money? Person says, how do you make money? You say, well, I do this business. What do you mean you do this business? Does it come from God? You pray to God, right? Everybody prays to God that their businesses be successful. But the question is, are we praying that, are we saying that God's going to take care of me, or I really believe that the business itself has some sort of power that I'm tapping into? And that's what Moses does, right? Moses' job is to take that faith that we all have in an innate way, that even the thief has, and he's supposed to make it in a way that we could actually live by that faith. He turns that faith into trust of God. So there was a story that one time, the famous Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, he had gone to visit the Maggid of Mizrich, the Hasidic master, teacher, student of the Baal Shem Tov, and teacher of all the Hasidic rabbis. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak went to visit him, and he comes back, and his father-in-law asked him, "You wasted time traveling to the great Maggid. What did you learn there?" He said, "I learned there's a God." He said, "You learned there's a God? Really? That's it?" So he calls the maid who's in the kitchen. He says, "Do you know there's a God?" She says, "Yes." So, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak answered, "She believes it. I know it." Right? So that's really the difference here, what Moses' job is, right? Moses' job is to take the faith that we all have, right, and to make it real, to make it tangible, that I could actually get through it. We could actually use it, to get through things, right, to get through trials, tribulations, and whatever that may be. And the same thing applies for the Moses of every generation, right? So, for example, it says in the Medrash that Mordechai was in his generation was like Moses in his generation, and we see from this that every generation has a Moses. And so, in other words, if you're saying that we need a somebody to shepherd our faith, right, to bring the faith into us, internalize the faith into each and every one of us, not enough it could be like this general idea of faith, then obviously there has to be in every generation there has to be Moses, because I never met Moses, right? So every generation has some sort of Moses. And what happened in the times of, using the example of Mordechai, that the Medrash says that he was like Moses, what happened in the times of Mordechai? In the times of Mordechai, it says in the Megillah that the Jewish people finished what they began. They accepted that which they had began. What does it mean they accepted which had began? So our sages tell us that they had that when the Torah was given, God, so to speak, forced us to accept the Torah. What does it mean he forced us to accept the Torah? There was such a revelation of God that he forced us to accept the Torah. On the other hand, when we come to to the times of Achashverosh and the times of Mordechai, the Jewish people were in the lowest level, right? They had sinned by participating in the Persian culture. They were such a bad spiritual state that God said that they were worthy of being totally wiped out, right? At the same time, they were able to actually finish accepting the Torah. Why? Because actually that trial, that tribulation, that fused them in a way they were actually able to then say, okay, we're going to do this, right? That, in other words, they were fully committed. And it's kind of like, a marriage, right? So it's all nice and rosy. You have a wedding, and everyone's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be with you forever, and I'm gonna take care of you," and all the things that we promise at a wedding. When push comes to shove, what is really going to fuse a couple together are the trials and tribulations that they go through. That's going to bring them closer together, perhaps, than more than that wedding ceremony, right? And really, that idea that the Jewish people were willing to give up their lives for the Torah, that's really what did it, right? Until then, the Jewish people never had to give up their lives for the Torah. They never had to say, well, either you're Jewish or you're going to be destroyed. That never happened, right? Even by the giving the Torah, it was all goodness, right? It was just revelation. And this is the idea of really what happens in exile, is that the Moses of the generation could nourish this faith, right? He could shepherd our faith and in a time of exile in a way that maybe we couldn't even do in the times of Moses, the original Moses. And this is kind of what this idea of crushed for the lamp means, right? For the illuminary, probably the more correct term. Crushed for the illuminary is that when we're crushed, that's what really brings out the oil, right? When you're crushed, that's what brings out the oil. That's why the Torah tells us that the olive has to be crushed, because just squeezing it a little bit, that's not going to do it. When you're crushed and there's a pressure and there's a challenge and there's something that challenges your existence, that's what really brings out the crushing the most. And when the previous Rabbi spoke about this idea, he was talking in Soviet Russia about actual self-sacrifice, right? About sacrificing your life for Judaism, right? It was illegal in Russia to teach Torah and to keep Jewish tradition in many ways. And the previous Rebbe himself was thrown into jail and for the crime of teaching Torah and setting up a network of Jewish schools. So we see that when the previous Rebbe was speaking about this, that's what he was really talking about. Now, when the Rebbe spoke about this, he turned it on its head, and he spoke about the idea of actually an internalized crushed, meaning that when we are in a situation that the times of Mordechai, the times of the previous Rebbe in Soviet Russia, and these times when the Jewish people were challenged in a physical way, meaning their lives were literally on the line, the crushing is from an outside source, and it's kind of, it forces you into that situation. But in America, where the Rebbe was speaking to, he was saying, we're in the United States, things are pretty good here. We don't have the challenges we had in the Soviet Union or in Tsarist Russia or wherever else Jews came from, but life is good. We don't have to worry about, we have freedom, thank God, in this country to do Torah and to study Torah and to do mitzvahs. So is this even relevant to us? The Rebbe said that actually, in a way, we have to be crushed as well. What does it mean to be crushed? In this case, crushing is actually that we realize that just the fact that we're in exile, right? That we're in exile and we don't have godliness revealed in a revealed way, right? We live in exile, that's a fact. We don't have the temple, we're not in the Messianic age, we don't have prophecy and all the things that are in a revealed way. We don't have all these things that we've had in times past. That itself, the fact that, and actually the Rebbe speaks about how the idea that if the temple is not rebuilt in our days, it's as if it has been destroyed in our days, God forbid. So really, the fact that it's a spiritual crushing. We're crushed that we don't have the spirituality that we should have as a Jewish nation. And the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi, had a saying that he once said. He says, I don't want anything. I don't want your Gan Eden. I don't want your Olam Haba. I don't want your world to come. I only want God. That's all I want. I don't need all the prizes, so to speak, that God gives us. I just want a relationship with God. And the Rebbe teaches us that the very fact that the Alter Rebbe spoke about this idea, and it was repeated by subsequent Chabad Rebbes throughout the generations, shows that actually, in a way, we all have an ability to get to this spiritual level that we just want a relationship with God. We're not looking for a prize. We're not looking for something out of it. We just want a relationship with God. And the idea that the Rebbe taught us is that we have to be crushed in a spiritual way. We have to be devastated about our own spirituality. We have to be devastated about another Jew's spirituality even more so, right? And when we see another Jew in a spiritual state that is unfortunate, that they don't have Jewish education or access to Jewish things or Jewish ideas or heritage, our job is to take that person and be crushed on ourselves that this person is not in a situation that he should be, right? When a Jew is in a situation that we could help them, we should be crushed. We should crush ourselves. And that's what it means. And in this way, we can actually reach that level of getting to a relationship with God himself, not just some sort of spiritual idea, but that's what it means, crushed for the illuminary, not for illumination, but for the luminary. So through this idea of realizing that every single Jew matters, and and our spirituality matters, that we should feel crushed. We should feel that in ourselves. We don't need an outside force to we don't need a Haman, we don't need a Stalin, we don't need a Hitler, God forbid, all these different terrible villains we've had through our time to make us feel crushed and to fuse the Jewish people together. But we should feel that spiritually we could be more connected to God. We could be in a better scenario spiritually, and that itself should crush us, so to speak, and bring us to the illuminary and bring us to relationship with God. And through that, we will come to the coming of Mashiach, speedily in our days. Thank you very much. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.